Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, criminal court, and other court issues as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. And if you have a tale to tell, you're welcome to contact me there as well at dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. I am very happy to have Jay Hughes. He's my new guest. He is an advisor to the National Military Family Advocacy Organization, NMFAO, and his mother is also a co-founder and vice president, congressional witness, and military family advocate of this organization as well. Now, apparently, mom has been exposing abuse that has gone on, and she is being punished for her testimony for speaking out. And so is Jay. However, mom is ill and they're continuing the legal abuse in the courts, and it's just not stopping. They did submit an amended brief 2 months ago, so they're waiting for that response. And hopefully that will go well because an appeal can take 1 to 2 years. Apparently, judicial canons have been violated. And I totally welcome you, Jay Hughes. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me on, Ms. Petri. It's been a long road for us both. This cancer came quite unexpected in the middle of the lawsuit, middle of fighting this lawsuit. And unfortunately, the day before the final hearing, my mother was prohibited and barred from attending her own trial via WebEx. She submitted a motion several months beforehand for online appearance, which was denied at the very last moment by the court. So this has just been a completely a pattern of repeated violations, American Disability Act violations,
Mhm.
constitutional violations, Bill of Rights violations, state law violations. And my father, who is a professional attorney working, with the military, Judge Advocate General's office, as a seasoned attorney should know what rights we have and should know not to violate them, and that would harm his case, and yet he continues to do so to get an easy win against us. His intention is to, not to receive anything financial from us, but to crush us entirely. He wants us jailed permanently, or wants us dead permanently. And he's gone in front of this judge, stated, "I don't believe my ex-wife stating she has cancer. She's lying. She's this and that. She's crazy. My son is crazy. First it was parental alienation, and now it's, my son's an adult. He's simply crazy." So there's, it's very difficult to take any kind of ground when we're receiving, abuse from what was used to be our own family member, and then abuse further from the courts in an effort to just gain more money and keep the cases going, keep the cases being filed. They're ignoring my father's um, all of my father's ethical violations. He's, violated ethics now. He's received a public reprimand, which was filed against him last September, from what I recall. And he failed to tell the court that on the day of the trial, which was yet another violation for this appeal. So, in one way, I'm not sure I have hope for an appeal, or have hope in any institutions or even any government anymore. I
Mm.
have hope in Jesus as a Christian, and that's all I can do as we continue to speak the truth, fight for the truth, and we're
Mhm.
backed up with all of the evidence in the world on our side. And my father only continues to deal in lies and manipulation and, you know, uh, illegal legal tactics.
It is very hard on individuals unless people have been in the situation, the the legal abuse from the other party. And people need to know because what happened to you and me can happen to anybody. It won't stop. People will say, well, you don't have to go into court. Just don't go in there. And it's like, but when you are being hauled in there, that's a different story.
I think of two things. Firstly, there used to be a time when two men would look at each other when they could not agree on something and say, I will see you in court. They had faith in the structure and institutions that were, created for them and by them. And now it's fallen to a point where people go to court, they're not winning anything, they're not gaining anything. And people who are going in for frivolous things like tripping over a sidewalk are gaining
Mhm.
millions of dollars against, like their neighbor or something. It's quite ridiculous. And the second is, Churchill was quoted for saying, you cannot battle against a lion when your head is in its mouth. You cannot reason with a lion when your head is in its mouth and it's waiting to bite down. This is how it is dealing with abusers. They're never going to agree with you. They're never going to come to equal compromise. They want all of you. They want everything from you. They want to destroy you. So there is no avenue of amicable dealings.
It's very disheartening, but everyone needs to know this because whether it's family court and even where you're at, it's the same. It's almost like these cases are pretty much the same. They're multifaceted, they're convoluted, but they're the same story.
Absolutely. And the courts love complicated issues and they
Hmm.
love creating more complicated issues on top of the issues that the plaintiff and, the two individuals bring to court to begin with, because the more cases that are filed, the more time the judges sit on the bench, the more time, the court clerks spend on a case means more money for the
Hmm.
state, more money for the government. So they're feeding off not necessarily battles, but they're feeding off complications and they're feeding off, furthering the trials, the legal trials and attorney fees people have to create for themselves. It's a racket.
Hmm.
The government claims a victory over ending the mob and mafia in the 1920s and 30s, but it never ended. They simply joined the government. They joined the judges, courts, they joined Congress and Senate, and we have a mafia of government now who utilizes the legal system in battle against its own citizens, against its own people who they should be supporting, and instead they're tearing them down.
Oh, I agree with you. All we can do is support each other.
Absolutely.
But it's very disturbing when they're making you homeless and you've got a very sick mom.
Yes, and the original divorce decree that was filed in 2019, and was completed in 2019, and that basically stated what amounts we would receive via alimony, via child support.
Hmm.
I given that to, a few accountant friends of mine, banking friends of mine. They looked at it and said, well, the way this is written, it's written in a way that you and your mother, if you were to ever get work, you would be able to go to court and get all your alimony removed. And there is no way either of you are ever going to be able to receive any type of job beyond working at McDonald's or Walmart, receiving less money than you're already getting. This judge was so conniving in the way he wrote this order for you. He ensured as punishment for you in speaking out against, your father, that you are going to remain homeless and destitute for the rest of your lives. And this is how this order is written out for you. And he said, it's unfortunate you didn't appeal it. You didn't know how to appeal it and you couldn't afford an attorney. This judge knew you could not afford an attorney to appeal it. He knew it was going to happen. And now the situation that you're in, there's no coming out of it. There's no coming back from it. And here's the thing about health. All victims of domestic violence and abuse at one point or another get some type of extreme illness, terminal illness, either cancer or, some type of, long-term disease. It's the high stress, the high cortisol that tears them down from the
Hmm.
inside of the case. And, if they're not destroyed by spending millions on an attorney in a useless battle in court, they're going to die from some type of illness.
I agree with
And
you. Go ahead. I'm
yes,
sorry.
oh, no problem. No, I was just stating further that we have, working with NMFAO, I have seen many, many spouses many parents who are not homeless, who are not destitute. They have excellent education, college degrees, jobs. They're receiving good pay, and they go into court. They spend millions on an attorney, millions on, appeals, and they still have their children taken away from them. They still get judgments where their assets are taken away from them or they're jailed simply for speaking out. In fact, one horrible story that just came out right now is, the child ran away from the abusive parent, went and, just phone call, took a phone call, made a phone call to the protective parent, and they took the protective parent to court and they jailed her
Mhm.
30 days while and then she ended up having a heart attack in court and they wouldn't release her on bail. So we had to just write a letter for her actually, and she was just released on bail, praise the Lord. But this is how the courts weaponize against protective parents.
Mhm.
They want to up the fees, up the bills. They want to torture you for believing that you have a fight.
And they definitely keep it going. I'm glad that she's out
Absolutely.
on bail because she had
Yes,
also suffered a heart attack in there as well.
correct,
And
correct. And they were denying her medical treatment.
right, and that's a human rights violation.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we see hundreds of thousands of cases like this every day.
Hmm.
And it's something that no journalist wants to cover. They don't want to really make it popular because speaking out against the institution, speaking out against the courts is it's not good press. It's not good business. They don't want to be targeted by lawsuits, even though journalists are protected from lawsuits, but the government still comes against them. So it's very difficult to get any type of reach when these things do occur.
Mm.
And it's even more difficult to get any type of assistance because they isolate you. They are even denying if they arrest a protective parent or they even arrest a child for running away, they're denying them their right to a phone call, to call an attorney. They're keeping them in jail, isolated. It's you have to look at this and say, is this really the United States of America? Do we really have constitutional rights, or are we living in a you know we're living in a 1930s Soviet Union?
Yeah, this is very I know because when I was dragged through it, I was racking up charge cards to pay useless lawyers. And then I just went pro se when I hit 40,000 in charge cards, something like that. But that was bad too. It was just all bad. And, I don't think these judges should be threatening jail to any parent.
Well, they're not just threatening, they're giving jail time. They're holding
Right.
them in contempt. They're trumping up ridiculous charges and they are throwing them in jail and they're receiving no repercussions. There's
No.
no investigations by the government. There's no investigations by the Attorney General of the states. There's no word from the governor of the states. They don't care. They don't want to look at it. It's bad for the reputation. It's bad for re-elections. And you really look at all the politicians who are joining. For example, Glenn Youngkin and Jason Miyares. Our cases in Virginia, we have dozens of cases in Virginia. And in fact, we met Mr. Jason Miyares when he was running for Attorney General. And we sat down with him, we spoke to him. He seemed interested in, looking into our case, looking into many other cases. But since he's been elected, silence. Other victims are writing to him in his office, silence. Other victims are writing to Glenn Youngkin, who, was supposed to be the superstar of Virginia, who was supposed to, make Virginia better,
Mhm.
silence. He's doing nothing for the victims, nothing for domestic violence victims, silence.
It's just when you brought up, how this causes illnesses, um, it also, with the kids, they have the adverse childhood experience score. And I'm sure your score is high. I know my kids' scores are high. And that will also lead to, as you said, an earlier demise.
Absolutely. And I've already been dealing with many health struggles. And although the court order says he's supposed to continue my health care until I'm 26, because the military health care is through TRICARE, which is for the Air Force, I cannot get TRICARE to testify in court that he has cut off my health insurance and my health care, which means I can't get them to testify in court, which means I cannot prove that I do not have health insurance, which means I cannot, there's no repercussion. There's nothing for me to do. So my scoliosis, I can't stand up straight for more than, 20 minutes.
Mhm.
I can't sit down, without pain. Not to mention, I'm having extreme, other intestinal issues because of all the stress.
Mhm.
I can't get treated. I have to just deal with it. I have to deal with the pain. And, I don't want to take pain meds. I don't want to get
Yeah.
addicted to them. So I deal with the pain. And, my father is so conniving. He sends emails saying, well, I need this and that for your health insurance. But he goes to court and he says, Your Honor, he has health insurance. I'm providing him health insurance. If he doesn't have health insurance, he needs to get TRICARE here to testify for him, knowing I can't do that. I wasn't able to get braces when I needed them.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't able to get, any other type of treatments when I was growing up. Now I'm 22. I just have to let it go.
Right. Um,
And, my reliance is on God for my health. When it's my time to die, it's my time. But for right now, all I can do is trust in the Lord and continue to fight.
right. I was told that these judges don't care about braces. And I thought they should care because it's a medical issue.
You No, and they do not care. My judge did not care. And in fact, he said, well, you can split the cost 50-50, 50 by, my father, 50 by my mother, knowing we're destitute. How much a brace is going for even now. I mean, when my sister got them when she was, teenager, it was 5,000 back then. With inflation, who knows how much it's going to cost, even in 2019, 2018.
Mhm.
We ignored it. Another drop in the water compared to everything else that had occurred in our case.
Mhm. So
And
what?
of course, he's vetoing anything. Even when I was going to chiropractor for my treatments, he vetoed that. He said, "No, I don't want you going here. I want you going somewhere else. I'm not going to pay these bills." And he still hasn't paid these bills. And I'm just days away from filing a rule to show cause against him to bring him to court because he's ordered to pay these medical bills,
Mhm.
and which he's still not done. But it's issues of finance are meaningless when you rack up all the sexual abuse against me and my sister, all the physical abuse, and then his attempted murder against me.
Mhm.
Why should we? But the judges always want to take it back to issues of finance.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
want to ignore issues of murder. They want to ignore issues of abuse. They want to ignore issues of legal and financial abuse, and then just say, no, you're just after money. That's it.
And they keep it going
They keep it going. They keep it going to rack up the bills for their own cases.
because you have been at this since 2018. Am I right?
2015, actually,
2015.
there was a first custody case, and that was in juvenile district relations court. And that was one judge who immediately looked at the case and said, There's abuse. And my mother gets full custody of me, full legal custody of me. He's ordered to pay this amount in child and alimony. And that was the case until 2017 when my father filed a change in circumstance. And here's the thing about filing a change in circumstance, you need a change in circumstance.
Yeah.
He never provided one. And that brought the case to Judge Smith. And Smith, who of course went back and said, well, no, we're removing all this. There is no abuse. The child is being coached. The child is being brainwashed, again, without providing any evidence. And now I'm ordering physical custody to my mother and full legal decision-making custody to my father. And again, he was very conniving. He didn't say full legal custody. He said they're going to make equal decisions, but my father has tie-breaking authority on decisions related to education and legal. Well, of course, he knows my parents are never going to agree. So he basically just went ahead and said, your father has the full right to make whatever decisions about your future, academic and legal, whatever he wants to do. And that's, of course, what my father did. He bullied me throughout my entire education until I was 18. I wasn't able to graduate high school. I had to go and get a diploma from a um, homeschooling group, and I was able to graduate high school that way. But he abused his authority. And here's another thing that's so dirty about public education. And again, Virginia being the most corrupt. I was at Madison High, and because of my extreme illness, I was vomiting like 2 to 3 times a day. I couldn't keep anything down. I was becoming so thin. I was becoming anemic. I couldn't go to school. And my father got the truancy officer involved, and the truancy officer decided to bully my mother and I. And the school decided to bully my mother and I because they were losing out on money for me not attending school. And I had an IEP, a learning disability,
Mhm.
meaning that they were getting extra money from having me in class.
Mhm.
And we had to contact HSLDA, which is the homeschooling. I forget the full
Yeah.
thing, but they're homeschool attorneys, excellent homeschool attorneys,
Mhm.
who had to step in and say, well, we can't represent you, but here's the laws, here's what your rights are. If they try to arrest you, then we can step in and get you some assistance. Um, but unfortunately, I had to let that, this period came right after I was arrested for pepper spraying him as well, right after he had attempted to murder me. It was 10 things right on top of each other that were building up, and we couldn't file an appeal. We couldn't go back to court, of course, because it would be the same judge. But when I had pepper sprayed my father, the school was so appalling. They still wanted me to come into school.
Mhm.
They still wanted to say, yes, he's under arrest. We still want him. We still need him to come into school. We still need him to attend. We still need him to physically attend. So I ended up speaking about this to a professional, and he's worked with the FBI. He's worked with investigating school shootings. Very good friend of mine, and he said, Jay, what you don't know is they're grooming you for one purpose. And this is what all schools do. They groom children with mental illness. They specifically target children with mental illnesses, and they do everything they can to increase their stress, um, increase their mental disability, because the goal is to have that child be a school shooter.
Mhm.
Because once that child kills children in the school, there's a shockwave throughout the state. Money is transferred like that. Governor, state, the school district, the um, the school, what is it called? Trump just enacted a order ending the Department of Education. Excellent decision,
Mhm.
um, because these schools have been grooming and forcing children to do this so they get more money and more focus on their state and on their school. School shooters are a business. That's why we have them in the United States of America, no other country. It's making money for the Department of Education. It's making money for the school district. It's making money for the politicians. It's profitable.
Yeah, it was the executive order on closing the Department of Education on March 21st, 2025.
Yes.
Yeah,
I had
President.
written a letter to the president of the Department of Education back in 2019. I never received a reply.
Mm.
I called in several times. They didn't seem to be very interested in helping me or assisting me with anything. So, And working with NMFAO as well, I've spoken to hundreds of children who are, my age, around my age, who are going through the same thing with school. And they're
Mhm.
saying the schools aren't helping me. I'm
Mhm.
telling them I'm being abused. They're not assisting me. They're not sending me to, child protective services. They're making me worse. They're saying I need to shut up, get my work done, and go home.
And that would also include
How?
bullies.
Oh yes, absolutely for bullies. I was bullied severely in school as well. I had a child come up and punch me in the stomach at school, and the teacher told me I needed to suck it up. In
Ah,
fact, my father lied about this case in court. He said he didn't say anything about being punched in the stomach. He just said, well, my teacher told me to suck it up, and that's why I was having problems in school. I wasn't able to read or write, and that's why I'm having problems in school. He didn't say anything about me being physically assaulted. And the judge believes him, didn't believe me.
and there was no police report when that happened?
No, never. My mother even went to the school and, tried to get something done. And, um, there was no discussion with the child's parents. There was no discussion. They basically ended it and they said, we're not, and, of course, my father overruled my mother and said, well, this is, Jay's making this up. School is
Mm.
making this up. Teacher didn't want to talk about it,
Mm.
ignored everything. And I think, it's a bit of, it's a bit of the culture as well. Oh, children get rowdy sometimes. They punch each other. It's only, fourth, fifth grade. It's no big deal. Why do we need to report it to the police? Why do we need to handle it? They're just boys. Boys will be boys, right?
Mm.
To a certain extent, I agree. But when it involves everything else, when it involves abuse at home, and the school even had the audacity when we were first going homeless to tell my mother, "Don't let Jay know you're going homeless.
Mm.
Don't tell him why you're living in a hotel. Don't tell him why you can't afford food."
That's terrible.
How are we supposed to deal with this? How are we supposed to respond to individuals who think in this way?
Hmm.
The expectation as a child is I'm being abused.
Hmm.
School is an institution that will help me and assist me. They're
Hmm.
going to send me to the right government agencies. My abusive parent will be jailed. I'll be living well. All of this will be behind me. I'll get a good education. I'll live a good life. None of this is ever going to affect me anymore. And then things start taking place, and they're shell shocked. They're stuck. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to react because people aren't reacting and dealing with the circumstance in the way that they had expected.
Right, because the teachers are mandated reporters.
Exactly. And yet they're not.
Yes,
They're
school
not, they're
systems
not
are
reporting
problems.
it. They're not doing anything. They're ignoring it. Um, we used to be number one in education. The United States was number one in education. We had the cheapest cost. Now
Mm-hmm.
we're, I think, late 50s in education now. We're not even number 10, number 15, number 20. And we have the highest cost per student. And this got worse when the Department of Education was, created under what president was his name? He's the one who just passed away.
Carter.
Carter. Thank you. Things have been just been getting worse for education. And in fact, you can even look to things like school lunches.
Hmm.
My father was a big health nut. It was another form of abuse he used. He would weigh our foods at home. He would control how much we eat. Very demonic. But, I also support good health. I
Hmm.
support, eating lots of, red meat, getting a lot of protein. This is nothing new. People are treating this like it's a fad under, RFK Jr. I don't agree with a lot of things on RFK Jr. I think he's, still very liberal minded. And, I'm not conservative or liberal. I'm not right or left. I'm Christian. My belief is in Jesus.
Hmm.
And, but, I think RFK Jr. is doing some excellent things on revitalizing, refocusing health in the United States. How long are we going to continue poisoning our children, poisoning our future? Abuse and domestic violence is one thing, but we're talking about the longevity of the health of the human race.
Hmm.
We're feeding our children garbage and plastic in the school lunches. And this is one thing that always riled me up from the inside. We have a health crisis, a diabetes crisis. What are we feeding our children? High
Mhm.
fructose corn syrup, hot dogs made out of plastic, pizza made out of cardboard. Where is our health? And yet they're more focused on getting students into classroom doing the work. Children don't have the energy to work because they're not eating well enough.
Mhm.
Everything about the Department of Education from its inception has just been dirty. It's
Mhm.
been a mafia. It's been corrupt.
Mhm.
But there needs to be a change in our culture if we want to move forward as a country. Otherwise, we're heading for doom.
Mhm.
And the first is our constitutional rights. Going back to NMFAO, we hear so many cases, so many women, so many men, so many children coming to us and saying, as well as many, many other entities saying, my rights are being directly violated by the court systems,
Mhm.
by police officers, by government agencies, by the FBI, by the CIA, by the NSA. What can I do? What avenues do I have? No attorney is even willing to represent me. If I get any representation at all, then they demand, 10, 20, $50,000 in, bonds, for damages and deposits. I can't afford that. What do I do?
Mhm. Ugh.
Our country takes advantage of the economy, making sure people are poor, then they
Mhm.
go to court and they destroy them in court, and they're poor, they can't afford attorneys, no attorneys want to represent you, and you're destroyed further.
Well, also, even if you get an attorney, they're still not going to
Exactly.
represent, you know. Um,
No. We we've spoken to several people, we've had several connections, and we've spoken to Mr. Rokana, who's, I believe was in the Senate, he's in Congress now. He's done interviews with Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk. He has connections. He could have assisted us, to an attorney. He did not. We spoke to one other woman who's now on Trump's board, who even said, if I could help you find an attorney, I would. She spoke to my mother and I. She was very kind and gracious, but she's just been so focused on politics and the political environment, she's ignored the people who voted her in the first place.
mm,
And that's the I'll try to remember her name if I can. But this is the pattern with the politicians that are being elected right now. They're making promises that I'll help you. And, who is it that's really pandering to domestic violence victims? It's the left. And, we've had more help, we've had more assistance. In fact, I assisted Congressman Cisnero, Gil Cisnero, in writing law into a bill which he submitted back in 2019. Excellent man, did some excellent work. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we were able to get that passed for domestic violence victims.
mhm.
But most of it is just I pass one or two laws, I get reelected, and then nothing. And that's the attitude of many politicians. And it almost seems like an instant thing. You have an individual who's from a good background, makes has a good job, they get involved in politics, and it seems like overnight they become either corrupt or they get elected and they ignore their constituents
Mm.
to the point where you can't even walk in to the congressional halls and sit down and say, I want to talk to you about what's going on. They're not there. You talk to a secretary.
Mhm.
Secretary writes down what you say on a piece of paper. The meeting's over. She throws that piece of paper away. You don't get a call back. You don't get an email back.
Mm.
And this is what hundreds of thousands of people are experiencing all over the nation. They can't reach their politicians. They can't reach their elected officials. They can't reach their congresspeople. They can't reach the Senate
Or your governor.
or your governor. Yes, any elected officials. No replies. And it's a miracle that this Attorney General's office provides, depending on what state you're in, the just confidentiality program.
Mhm.
She's been a help to many of our victims because if you rent a home, buy a home, or even rent a small apartment or even a hotel room, excuse me, your address is put on the internet in so many different ways.
Mm,
So this address confidentiality program has been a big help to many victims who come to NMFAO,
mhm.
and they're saying, it's probably saved my life from my abuser who's stalking me.
And how long has the stalking been going on?
You know, it happened right after, we first left the abuse in 2014, and my father, and we were actually the first ones to file against him because he had financially abandoned us. Me and my mother, my sister and I were living off my mother's credit card, which was maxed out by that time. And it was our pastor and my sister who said, you need to file against him. Said to my mother, you need to file. You need to go to court and get this amount to us. At least get some spousal support because we're going to end up on the street otherwise.
Mhm,
He's not taking care of us as, a man of God, husband of God should.
mhm,
Now you need to take him, into the court, which is, ordained by God. The courts belong to God, the judges belong to God. If there is justice, you need to file.
mhm.
So we were forced to do that, and the stalking began, immediately after he moved out of um, our old home, and it was very sporadic. Sometimes we would go into our car. He would leave chocolates in our car after breaking into our car. I would go home and there would be his old clothes sitting on our front porch, an ice cream machine in the back of our car. I would find my back gate unlocked. When I had a home for 2 years, we had rented a small townhouse and just for 2 years, and that was before the divorce decree and our spousal child support was lowered. We were actually able to afford, a small rental home. He was breaking into my backyard. He was looking in, there were handprints on the back glass. He was looking into our living room, our bottom living room. Came home one day and noticed, my front lock. There were scratch marks all over the front lock. Someone had been getting in. It either could have been my father or it could have been, private investigator. So we had private investigators following us. We went into restaurants. Someone would sit down next to us, start asking very invasive questions, and there's no way that this is not a private investigator. I would
Mhm,
go out and see, that person standing on the, street, trying to look like he's not following us. And just so many cases of people coming after us. And I think, his brother is extremely wealthy, my father's brother, extremely wealthy man. He's in stocks. I believe, he hired several private investigators to come after my mother, probably hoping my mother's having an extramarital affair or we're hiding funds somewhere, that would make it more, it would make a better case for him in his divorce case, custody case coming up against us. And
mhm.
of course, we have no funds to hide. I wish we had hidden some funds. It would have helped us, protected us, but
Well, who thinks this
and
would have happened?
exactly who can account for that? And you're going into a marriage, who a newlywed couple isn't going to sit there and say, I want a prenup. I want a
Mm,
prenuptial. I want to protect my funds in case you become abusive.
mm.
No one's going to go into a marriage like that. So, so many individuals who come into NMFAO are, deeply regretful they didn't set aside some funds or, some other assets for them to dip into when things got bad. And, frankly, I don't think it would make much of a difference anyways, because it would just be wasted on an attorney.
Mm,
If my mother and I had, a couple million of dollars stashed somewhere, it would have just gone to an attorney and we would be in the same situation. Nothing would be different.
mm.
It's a catch 22. It's a constant catch 22.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Ah, a lot of people find themselves in the catch 22 when they go into these courts and the
Yes,
rug gets pulled out from underneath them. And there's so much collusion. Everybody knows everybody.
it's an old boys network, and
Hmm.
it's
evidence, or I've also found the clerk won't give the judge the evidence. That's
We're dealing with that in our own case right now. In fact, the clerks have become very belligerent against us. Um, we handed in a, for example, when the judge took over 76 days from the date of the trial for the defamation suit hearing to come back with a decision. And we had 30 days to reply to that decision, basically a list of objections. We submitted the objections on time. The clerk did not give the objections to the judge until almost 2 weeks later, after the 30 days had ended. The judge came back and said, well, I don't care when you submitted it. I didn't receive this on my desk until after the 30 days was up. I'm denying your objections. And that's another point in our appeal. That is another judicial canon violation.
mm-hmm.
The judge is supposed to reply with, I think, between 30 to 60 days and have an order written up and signed. He took, I believe, over 70 days.
I don't think anyone's following the judicial canons.
I don't think they're even reading them.
Well, they were once attorneys, a lot of them.
And you know what you're seeing with a lot of new judges is they're attorneys who practice for maybe 1 to 2 years. There's really no criteria for what needs to be done to become a judge.
Mhm.
It's more of a, many judges are elected just over a round of drinks with the chief judge and, the judging panel. That's it.
Mhm.
If you buddy up to someone and you have, good connections, you're in as a
Right.
judge. That's all it takes. You don't need to have any knowledge of law. You don't need to have any example of, cases. I don't think there's even really a test you need to take
Mhm.
in many states. It's just, a panel of a couple of judges, a couple of
Mhm.
interviews, someone, speaks a couple of good words about you, presto, you're a judge. And that's
Also,
what we're seeing with, many,
right.
yes, my apologies.
Oh, no, you're fine. Also, a lot of these attorneys could not cut it getting into a major law firm, so then they become judges.
Exactly. And if they do get into a law firm, then, they're probably not treated well by the law firm, probably not getting as many cases as they should be, treated more like interns than
Hmm.
anything else. And they become very spiteful. Um, so they decide, hey, I'll just go and be a judge. I've got connections. I don't need to be taking this from, a pathetic little law firm. And, you have people like my father who failed the bar 3 times, had to get a dose of hypnosis before he was able to pass the bar on his own.
Wow.
Graduated bottom of his class. He's not an intelligent guy. He can't even have intelligent conversation with him. He had to sit there and read books, how to make friends, how to have conversations. He's what I call a social chameleon. He
Hmm.
copies behavior mostly from my mother and my sister and I. And, he comes across as very nice, very
Hmm.
agreeable individual, the type that's people pleaser. It's
Hmm.
learned behavior because he doesn't know how to act on his own. He doesn't know how to have his own behavior.
Hmm.
And, he's a horrible attorney. He's a terrible attorney. I read through his orders that he writes, his, even his style of arguing in court. I sometimes, wonder how he made it as an attorney, how he continues to have clients. He's stupid.
Hmm.
He's a stupid attorney. He's a stupid man. The only reason he ever wins anything in court is one, because the judges are corrupt, and two, because he's a jag.
Hmm.
So they suck up to him because he's in the Air Force.
Hmm.
And, this ethical reprimand he just received is vindicating for me for
Hmm.
what I've been saying all along. He does not know how to behave with people. This woman who came against him, Miss LeMay,
Hmm.
he botched her case, he botched her appeal, and he exited her case at the last moment without even notifying her. And I
Oh.
looked at that and I said, that is completely like him. He is the type to make his own decisions and completely rebuff people in that way. And I'm surprised this hasn't happened earlier.
Mhm.
I'm surprised, more, clients of his aren't coming forward with reprimands against him. And in
Or
fact, I believe, yes,
or malpractice lawsuits.
yes, malpractice lawsuits. In fact, another individual you interviewed with, Mr. James Sisko,
Oh
contacted me
yeah.
on LinkedIn and said, your father represented me. He did a horrible
Ugh.
job, and now I'm stuck with my case.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So like he couldn't
It's a
sue
pattern.
for malpractice. I don't know. I mean, is there something that can be done? I mean, even as a class action with other individuals that have been damaged?
Well, I'm not really sure about a class action suit or if I can even find anyone because I'm not really sure how my father is finding his clients because he doesn't have a web page anymore.
Hmm.
And the law firm that he was with, where Mr. Cisco had found him, he's exited from Patriots Law Group.
Hmm.
And in fact, he's removed all evidence of ever being with Patriots Law Group. So obviously, he had some bad blood there. And they probably told him, resign, or maybe they fired him. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
He's also exited the military, which is very interesting. He's finally retired. And, my belief is that, to affect his security clearance every year, he has to report, if he's had any reprimands, any violations, anything related to law. So before the year was up, he just decided, I'm not going to report this to the military. I'm just going to exit while I'm in good standing with the military. I'm going to get my points and take my retirement while I still can. So he decided to retire, I believe in September, October.
But that
And
reprimand
now
came,
yes,
that
my apologies.
that reprimand came last September, right? The ethical
Yes,
violation.
last September. So I believe he retired like a month or 2 months later.
Hmm. Do you think that that would have popped up on their radar?
The military absolutely knows, but if I think if he doesn't notify them, there's a culture in the military where we know everything about you, but unless we report it to you, we're going to be on your side. It's very much a buddy system. Um, in some ways that's good. There needs to be loyalty in the military, but in other ways, they're ignoring not so much the law, but as the rule of law,
Hmm.
where they're favoring the service member over the crimes and ethical violations he's committed. So they're basically saying, well, we kind of know what you've done, but because you haven't directly told us in writing, we're going to ignore it because on a technicality, we can just let you retire in peace.
I wish I was allowed to retire in peace. I'm
He even
just.
had the audacity to write me an email many years ago and say, I hope you consider joining the military, Jay, because they've been very affluent and good for my career and my life. I said, of course they have been. They've protected you as
Mhm.
an abuser. They've been corrupt
Mm,
and have protected you while you're abusing your family, while you tried to murder your own son, while your own son pepper sprayed you.
mm,
Of course you're going to be favorable to them.
mm,
I had a desire to join the Marines when I was, 16, 17. And, as the abuse got worse and I started looking more and more what the military was doing and ignoring us, and I got more involved with dealing with NMFAO, and I heard more and more stories about just how corrupt the military is. It's left such a bad taste in my mouth. I want nothing to do with our government. I want
mm,
nothing to do with our country. And unfortunately, there's while the United States of America is considered the best in the world, and there's no other better place to go, we're far from where we should be as a country. We're far from where we should be as a government when we're weaponizing our own government, our own laws against our innocent constituents, innocent people.
Mm.
Why should I want to work for and join a military and a government that
Mm.
is nothing more than a weapon against liberty, against the Constitution, against freedom?
Well, I
And
had,
it
oh,
was,
go ahead.
yes, my apologies, go ahead. No, no,
No, you go
just one
ahead.
more point.
Go ahead.
It became much, much worse in about 2020, 2021. We started being harassed and targeted by an individual called Lindsay Rowland online. And we discovered this woman is a criminal hired by my father. She was arrested for punching a police officer during some type of political rally.
Uh,
And, she's clearly having some drug abuse issues. And this is the individual he's partnering with, photos of him and her on his social media and on her social media, sending her after us, saying she's going to join him in the defamation suit against us. And we had never even met this individual.
mm.
Why is he hiring a criminal to harass us and come after us?
What a shame. I mean, that's also gang stalking.
It's completely gang stalking. And,
Mm.
we go to the judge, we report this to the judge, and silence, they don't care. We try to file a protective order, they don't care. And, we couldn't even get Lindsay Rowland's information. We went to court and they said, well, in order to file a protective order against her, when she's clearly, and this is, Lindsay Rowland has been reported to the FBI and CIA. She's been giving death threats to elected public officials. She gave death threats to President Biden and Vice President Harris when they were in office. She's given death threats to many other public officials. We were in contacting, have her removed from a few meetings because she was going in there and she was giving death threats to the officials during the meetings. And this is the type of individual he's aligning himself with.
And no one threw her out of the meetings.
They threw her out. They had her arrested.
Huh. Well, that didn't last long.
No,
Uh,
I don't understand. First of all, how she's not in jail for, punching a police officer when she was arrested for it. But, that story's not completely clear.
hmm.
It's just very bizarre. Why would he align himself with this individual? What does he have to gain? Doesn't he think it's going to be damaging to his, career?
You would think, yeah.
Doesn't he think it's going to be damaging to his clients? Shouldn't I do some more research into who this individual is before I meet her in public, take her out on a date,
Mhm.
and, post, illicit photos on my social media with her?
Mm.
And my father is such a bizarre man. He's posting himself on dating sites, Bumble, and whatever, Tinder, I think it is, Tinder.
Tinder,
And
yeah.
he's calling himself 45 years old when he's almost 60 now.
Is he posing in his military outfit?
Well, no,
Hmm.
he's doing something much worse. He took a photo of himself with my sister, who's severely ill,
Mm.
or claims to be severely ill, with her husband. And her husband is a hippie.
Mm.
He's a hippie redneck, and he posted a photo with my sister cut off. Her hand is in the photo. So it's just him and my brother-in-law. And he's trying to, show himself off as, look at me, I'm friends with the younger generation. And my sister, came to me and said, I did not give him permission for that photo. I did not give him permission to post that on a photo. He's stalking me and he's
Mhm.
coming over to my house and he's beating up my husband and I. He's physically violently hurting us. And we're calling the police, and the police are his friends. They're not arresting him. He's stalking me. And I'm too fearful to go to court and testify, but he's putting his name, as a witness, putting my name as a witness. I can't come to testify because he's going to kill me. In 2019, during a court visitation, it began very slowly. During the first visitation, he stalked me, he harassed me, he chased me down as I tried to run away during the entire first visitation. And he sat there and he told me a story about how, some children tried to sell him marijuana while he was in high school. This is the first visitation. This is the first time you've seen your child in years, and you're claiming that your child is brainwashed and or alienated from you. And your first decision is to tell him about drugs and convince him to take drugs. That's what goes through your mind. I began getting taxis. I was getting a small allowance from my mother. I took cash. I called the taxi company. I was getting taxis. I was running away from him, going to, a couple malls sometimes. I would just go and watch movies and then come back. And, he would never show up when I returned, and my mother would pick me up from the visitation. He tried to chase my taxi one time. He ran a red light. He nearly ran into another car, chasing
Mm.
my taxi down. And the next visitation, as I was going towards where my taxis would come, he came at me from an alleyway behind the strip mall area of Springfield Police Station. There's a little strip mall area. There's a Panera there. And behind that Panera, there's a long alleyway where the trucks make their deliveries. There's no cameras back there. There's nothing back there. He knows that. He came at me with my car. He tried to hit me with his car. I jumped out of the way at the last second and ran for my life.
This is terrible.
And then the next few visitations, he doesn't show up. There's no word from him. There's no email from him.
Hmm.
And then, we didn't know that he was on, he claimed to be on leave. He claimed to be, on deployment, for a month and a half. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Mhm.
And then, he doesn't even notify us. So, 3, 4, 5 visitations go by. He doesn't show up. We leave. And then one day, he just emails out of the blue saying, I'm taking you, Jay, on a weekend trip because this is a weekend visitation. So you're going to be with me during the weekend? Bring clothes, and I'm taking you away. I had never even gotten in the car with him, and he thinks he's going to take me away.
Ah.
My mother said, Jay, you better pack some clothes. I said, no, screw you.
Mhm.
You're my mother, but you don't tell me what to do. I'm not going with him.
Mhm.
He says, and it's just, we show up to that visitation. I didn't expect him to be there. I expected him to, skip it again. He's probably just blowing smoke.
Mhm.
He turns up. He turns up at the visitation. I had gotten a small thing of pepper spray after, he tried to kill me from my friend at school. Friend looked at me, he's a Hispanic kid. He was a good kid. And he said, Jay, you've got to fight back against him.
Mhm.
I don't care if you end up in jail, you've got to fight back against him, protect yourself. And if you get mugged in the street, so just take this. I carry this pepper spray with me. I can buy another one, take this. So I started carrying it with me everywhere. I don't know what came over me that day. I ran up to him. I took the pepper spray out and I let him have it.
Mhm.
And let him have it. I will not be controlled by you. I will not be abused by you. I will not let you try to harm me ever again.
Mhm.
And he has the audacity to go into court for this defamation suit, use that video that he took of me pepper spraying him and saying, well, look at her, look at his mother who's walking off. She's just walking during, while he's running up to pepper spray me, yelling, profanities at me. She's just walking. Well, where is she walking towards? The video doesn't show that. She's walking towards the police station. She calls the police on me. He gets me arrested. My own mother gets me arrested. And he's complaining about that to the judge. He fails to let her know that he fails to let the judge know that my mother had me arrested. And that's why she was walking. How is a tiny, 190-pound woman, you know, supposed to stop her nearly 200-pound son from running up towards her father in anger? What is she supposed to do? Grab my ankle and let me fall flat on my face?
Mhm.
What is his expectation for showing this video to the judge? And how is the judge so stupid? He looks at that and he says, yeah, this is defamation. How is that defamation? How is me pepper spraying my own father in self-defense defamation? He didn't prove any damages during the whole defamation case. 1.5 million he filed against us for. He was awarded $400,000 in damages at which we appealed. The judge didn't bring any evidence of defamation in his order. My father didn't bring any, evidence of defamation in his order. And here's another thing. Discovery is meant to be completed before the case goes to trial. Discovery was never completed. My mother was sick. She was ill. She was having difficulty doing it on her own. She was
Mhm.
taking her time. She filed a delay. The judge, we had one judge, Judge Sheridan, he was an old Marine. And, he said, we're going to do discovery first. It's been delayed, but we need discovery done. And then what happened? My father went and he said, no, the judge said, we're not going to do discovery. We're going to skip it. He lied. He committed perjury again.
He said that on the witness stand.
He said that, yeah, on the witness stand.
Hmm. So how is your mom now? Because I know she wanted to come on in the springtime and then she canceled.
Yes. Yes. Well, she was diagnosed with terminal colon cancer in 2023, I think late October 2023. And, she was told we need to do immediate surgery on you, but we can't do surgery on you because if we get you on the operating table, there's 80–90% chance we're going to lose you. We cannot take that risk. So she was told she had maybe a week to live at best. So, we just decided to go home and, just put her on um, just pain relief. And, we contacted a couple of doctors. We found Frontline Doctors of America, and we found a doctor who just said, put her on ivermectin, put her on fenbendazole. There's a couple other medications I'm going to give you. And, just on those meds, she's been alive since 2023.
Hmm.
And, she's been getting much, much worse though, especially the past few weeks. We just got blood reports back and she has a hemoglobin of 3. And that is basically the heart's ability to make red blood cells and provide oxygen to the body.
Hmm.
Here's the thing, and I want to state this as a miracle. When you have a low hemoglobin and normal is considered about, I think, like 20 or so, people start fainting when they get down to 14 and 10.
Hmm. Hmm.
My mother is at 3. She still has strength to walk, although she's leaning on me, she's leaning on the walls. It's
Hmm.
amazing she hasn't fainted. It's a pure miracle. It
Hmm.
is a miracle. She's alive. It is Jesus saying, now is not your time to go. I know you're not well, but
Hmm.
you still have a fight to keep, and it is your timing. It is my timing as a Lord when it is for you to go.
Hmm.
She should not be alive. Every doctor is looking at her blood tests, her X-rays, saying, it's a miracle her cancer is still in the colon and
Hmm.
hasn't, metastasized to the other parts of the body. She should be at stage 4 now. She should be covered in tumors. She's not.
Hmm.
Ivermectin's, keeping the tumor controlled to the colon.
Well, is there anything I could talk to you all afternoon, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, I'm sure I could keep going, but I just want to say in finality, it's all of our story coming together in such a way is meaningless. If we were lying, then we should have been dead many years ago.
Hmm.
I should have been dead many years ago. I hope my story has some meaning to someone. And one more thing I would love to add is, I was institutionalized twice. I was on the verge of an extreme nervous breakdown. I was suicidal, homicidal, and I was taken to Fort Belvoir's inpatient, adolescent mental health clinic. Excellent program, and I was treated for 2 weeks each time. And my father showed up. This was the first time I was admitted. The trial for the custody was done, but the order was not yet provided and signed by the judge.
Hmm.
So my father showed up to the institution, waving the transcripts, demanding and bullying the staff to see me for his visitation time while I was in the inpatient. And they had to sit there and explain that, sir, even if you had assigned even if there was no order and you were a full, legal custody of me, and there was no custody dispute, you were just my father. If I did not want to see you, I would not be forced to see you.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people
They
know
had to
that.
ask him to leave.
Right,
No,
because you were over the age
obviously
of
he didn't.
14. Right.
Precisely.
Yes. Interesting.
And, he goes to the court and he makes it seem like I have a reservation ticket into the inpatient that I can check in and check out anytime I'd like to avoid visitation time with him.
Mm.
And what I was told, Fort Belvoir's program is such a coveted program that there are over anywhere from 100 to 200 children admitted per, not admitted, but, sent there and interviewed for admission per night.
Mm.
And only about 10 or so per night get admitted. I've gone for interviews about 5 times. I was only admitted twice.
Mm.
I was even sent there after I had pepper sprayed him. I didn't qualify for admission after I had pepper sprayed him.
Mm. Right. I used to be a psychiatric nurse, and there was a certain criteria that these insurance companies follow that whether someone gets admitted or not.
Precisely.
Mm.
And under military TRICARE, I'm sure it's, even different set of, you know, needs and necessities for what child needs to meet to be admitted. And, here's the amazing thing. When my mother filed an emergency hearing after I pepper sprayed my father, he went in front of the judge and the judge had to lecture my father and say, this child has just pepper sprayed you. Whether or not you actually tried to kill him or not, the fact of the matter is he's under arrest for pepper spraying you. Do you realize that if you continue the custody visitations, you can kill each other?
Mm.
This is a high possibility, high probability. Do you not do, risk assessment in your job? You know what my father replied with? He
Mm.
said, if my son harms me or I harm my son, that is a risk I'm willing to take to continue being in the presence of my son.
Mm.
I'm willing to put his life at danger just so I can get my fix for abusing him during the visitations. That's what he said.
I'm so sorry.
And it's a miracle the judge waived physical visitations and turned it to phone visitations. Um, I'm not a man to use profanity. I find it degrading to myself, to other people. I frankly find it a sign of lack of intelligence. If you
Mm.
have a need to revert to base profanity,
Mm.
it's not a necessary outlet for anger. But that period in my life became such a welling, long story short, the phone visitations were to be 15, 20 minutes, every other Saturday.
Mm.
I would pick the phone up and I would, I don't even remember what I would yell. I would just yell profanities. I would yell vulgarities at him for 3, 4 seconds, hang up. He has the audacity to email less than 10 seconds later, attacking my mother and saying, I will take you to court. 10, 3-second phone visitation is not enough time. I
Mm.
need to have longer time on the phone with my son. I had just finished verbally abusing you, threatening to kill you, threatening
Mm.
to kill myself, and you want to continue the conversation? That's what you're telling me? When I had filed the police report against him for him trying to murder me, you know what happened?
Mm.
The police wrote up the order, they wrote up the police report, and then they filed it away the day afterwards. I had given them all the evidence. I have it in email,
Mm.
have it in writing. And I come back to them and I say, why did you not investigate this further? They said, well, you never sent us any evidence. I said, yes, I did, and you have it with you. You never investigated this. You never pursued this investigation, and now it's 2 years later. We contacted the district attorney. District attorney told the police, said, get me something on, Jay's father that I can use to prosecute him. No investigation, nothing. That was in 2021. I still haven't heard anything back.
Unbelievable. And that's why a lot of young people don't have a lot of faith in authority or trust. You got trust issues.
Absolutely. And now it's getting even worse with home invaders. It's another catch 22. Do I buy a gun and defend myself so I can be, sued by, the state and attorney for, killing a home intruder? Or do
Hmm.
I allow my home to be robbed, and do I allow myself to be killed, my family to be raped so that I don't get sued in court? What do I do? I'm destroyed either way.
That's a fear. That is a real fear of a lot of
There's no
people
protections
too.
against the victim.
No.
Yes. The first thing I do is say, if you're a victim of domestic violence and abuse, if you claim to be a feminist, buy a gun, get gun training. Don't sit there and expect the government to be your daddy and protect you
Mm,
from a violent criminal. Don't sit there and complain about rape culture in colleges. Don't sit there and say you're afraid to walk home at night if you're not willing to purchase a weapon and defend yourself.
mm, mm,
Our culture is so hypocritical and messed
hmm.
up.
It's really gone downhill. I'm sorry you and your mom are going through this.
Thank you very much. Again, I just want to say, for everything we've been through, all I can do is hope we assist one individual, because I don't believe we'll ever receive any type of justice. All likelihood, if this appeal is even favorable to us, and my father will in all likelihood appeal that as well, my mother won't live to see it.
Mm,
Um, and it's really just asking people to come forward, share this story, share our story, share our campaign. I have campaigns on Give, Send, Go, GoFundMe. I'm not asking anyone to donate, just share it.
mhm,
Share our story is all I can ask, because I don't see any other purpose we have.
mhm. Now, if anyone has any questions, how can they contact you?
Absolutely, you can contact me at JNMFAO at .org, j at nmfao.org. That's JAY at nmfao.org. Email, or you can contact me on my LinkedIn, Jay Hughes, or you can contact us through our website, which is nmfao.org.
Okay, I'll put that all in the podcast notes, but don't jump off, okay?
No worries.
I appreciate you speaking out. Hang on, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, other platforms, Spreaker, other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Jay Hughes, for speaking out. And I'm sorry,
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure to be with you.
definitely. Thank you.